Well, look, good evening, folks. As you can see, this is all a bit sort of, we're making up as we go along, as I think probably are everything at the moment. Looking at the people that have joined as attendees, thank you. I know we're all busy. We're probably all getting a little bit webinar weary, which is why I got hold of both Graham and Mark this morning, who very kindly agreed to join us. And really, because it was a year ago yesterday, for those of you that came, and some of you did, and I hope some of you will come to the next one when we do one of these, but for the moment, we're going to do it by video. And the whole purpose of the event, Get Insights, last year was to get some perspective from outside of dentistry. And it was very well received. Tony Kilcoyne was there as a moderator. He's got three separate webinars to do this evening, so he won't be able to join us, but he's going to do another one with us next week or later this week. And I think there's just so much information, there's so much data, there's so much uncertainty, there's some anxieties, myself included, probably for us all, about what's going on at the moment. But I think it's also the time to think about something we talked about last year quite a lot, which is our own state of mind, and how our own state of mind and our thinking now is going to shape what happens further down the line, basically. And it seems like an opportune time to bring in a couple of people who aren't dentists. I'll introduce them separately in a second, just to get their take on it. So I'm going to unmute Graham. Just to stress, by the way, we haven't rehearsed this. Literally a text this morning. Do you fancy doing a call? And thank you guys for volunteering at short notice to do it. Graham, good evening, mate. Just check. Can we hear you again? Are you there?
Have you
unmuted? We can hear you.
That's a big button to unmute me.
So look, mate, for anybody that's not been near a rugby pitch for the last 30 years, I know you're a very humble chap, so I'm going to try and just put your career and experiences into context. I know you have a very special relationship with your dentist, because you sleep with her. Is that correct?
I do.
Yeah, they are married. Just to clear that one up. Where do we start? Graham, professional rugby player, England, Lions, Tigers. He's very humble. He won't tell you any of this. And most recently over in Japan with the World Cup, where I think Georgia, you had the best performance ever on a World Cup tour. And you're now somewhere flying between home and Burbage. I'm not sure where home is, Burbage or Ireland at the moment, but you're managing the forwards over in Munster. And it's all going very well. Is that a fair summary, Wig?
Yeah, it's spot on, Kev, as normal. Spot on.
That's all I've got.
A jet setter. Sounds quite classy and cool lifestyle, but it's not. I mean, look at me.
No, I'm sure it's not as glamorous as. So I guess the question is, I think it'd be useful insight just to understand that you're responsible for the performance of these athletes on the pitch, and yet right now you can't actually physically do anything with them. I guess the environment's changed significantly for us all, but like all of us with our own leadership and management teams, there's still stuff that we're doing. And I'm as intrigued as probably everybody else is to understand what you're doing at the moment, perhaps both in terms of physical and mental fitness for your team, basically. Is that a nice open question?
It is. I apologise if I start going off on tangents. Crikey. It's like living in a film, this, isn't it? It's like living in a bad film, the uncertainty of it all. And so our league was suspended on the 13th of March. And so we're based in Limerick. So I still live in Leicester, but we were planning to move over to Limerick this summer. That looks like it's not going to happen for obvious reasons. So I'll still commute. Shut all the schools in Ireland, 13th of March, and sport followed suit the day after. So our league has been suspended. The Pro 14 league includes teams from Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Italy and South Africa, a couple of South African teams. That's been stood down indefinitely. At this point in time, we are looking to assemble again late May, but that's going to be pushed back with an attempt to try and get the league going again in July. And we'll try and finish off the current season, but then we'll just push straight on to next season, flat out. So in one regard, this next period is a bit of an off season for our players. And that's important to remember what I'm about to tell you. But everything's going to get pushed back. And sport, we need bums on seats. And that means lots of people cramming into a stadium, sitting next to each other. So at this point, the league has been suspended. We're all on pay reductions because people aren't coming to watch the games. And I didn't realise this, that TV money is actually paid weekly as such. So clubs just can't live off a fat contract of TV rights. You know, they need to actually play a game to get that money. So money's tight for obvious reasons, as it is for everyone. But we're in a situation now where you've got players stood down, and the physical aspect's relatively simple. We send them away with programs to do. They're all professional athletes. They're used to training. And they've all got where they are today by going to the local park as teenagers and training hard. So that aspect is quite simple. You send them away with programs, and we send them away with little GPS units that they all wear, little boxes that sit in between the shoulder blades and a neoprene vest. So we monitor what we're doing. It's quite impressive. I'm sure a few of the lads have been driving around with his GPS vest on, having looked at a few of the numbers. Or even heard one guy attached to his dog, bloody quick dog. Probably an Irish wolfhound, saying that. Are they quick? They're quite quick. But in terms of, just going off on a tangent now, in terms of weights, you know, rugby players have to be big, robust men. We've got a bit of an issue with some of the lads, because when they announced sport was going to be finished in Ireland, they came and emptied our gym, the lads, took a load of weights home, but there was only so many to go around. And we've got a few guys now who are normally going to be running around 120 kilograms, because to play front row, you need to be big. And we're worried about muscle mass depreciation. We could have a new sport when the season kicks off again, just a load of skinny blokes running around. So there's that aspect. So we've got to keep an eye on that. But I'd say more importantly, it's the mental side of it, because they're young men. You know, the oldest player we have in the squad is 30 years old. These are young men with young families, with lots of uncertainty. You know, we've all agreed pay deductions. Some guys are out of contract in this period, you know, and we're going to have to work out where their contract stops. They normally stop 30th of June. That's going to have to be extended if the season gets extended. So you've got a lot of uncertain young men sat around, as the rest of us in society. And I think as a coach and as a leader, I've left them for a couple of weeks to get their heads around things. But at this point now, it's important for me to be a beacon, as I said to you, Kev. I can't think of a better expression. Someone to look to, someone to give advice, more as I'd say a father figure or an elder brother in these times of uncertainty. That's where we are now. So we're third week into a stand down period where we've left them to their own devices as gradually the lockdown came into force on Friday night in Ireland. So I'll now, over the next 10 days, be picking them up, just seeing how they are. And they'll have a load of questions. The physical side's quite easy. You know, in Ireland, there's a 2K, you can only operate within a 2K radius of your house. You can't go anywhere further than that in Ireland to go and train. So they're able to go up to the park and lift weights if they've got it, but it's the mental side of it I'll be looking to support them on.
What are your plans for that, Wig? I mean, I don't have to give anything away, but fundamentally, what the principles do you think behind that?
Listen. Just try and talk through their anxiety. I mean, I'm a father, 3 kids and a wife, and I will be my point of attack with those young lads. We'll just be listening. How are you getting on? How's things at home? How's your family? You know, not rugby. There's plenty of time. They're not going to forget how to play rugby. As long as they stay fit, the mental aspect, we can pick up with them. But everyone's looking for answers, aren't they? The uncertainty. Everyone wants to. I mean, we put the clocks forward on Sunday. Everyone was joking. Let's put the clocks forward a year or 6 months. Everyone wants to put the clocks forward. But I think it's, as a leader, as someone who is a teacher, you know, I regard myself as a teacher to these young lads, is just to be there and listen, and try and guide them through, and try and keep context, because it's all about controlling what you can control, isn't it, in life, in any business, it's particularly in sport, because you get that many variables thrown at you. But that's certainly our plan the next 10 days now, picking up the guys mentally, just listening.
And I think there's some common themes. I mean, when we spoke last year in London, you know, in many ways you were saying very similar things. You know, you were coaching the Georgian squad at the time, and there was a language barrier. They'd all got different names. There was cultural differences, and yet it's one of the things that I think struck a lot of people was the importance of knowing them and understanding them, and knowing the names of their wives and kids. And I don't think this isn't particularly a rugby conversation, is it? It's a humanity conversation. It's about relationships, and I think there's some common themes there for us all with what we're doing with our teams, starting with our leadership teams and working outwards, but also with our patients. We're going to hear from Simon what he's been doing with his patients, just being there for them. And I think from a business point of view, for your customers to know that you are still open for business, albeit in a weird way at the moment, is important. And I guess he's saying the same thing, whether you call it the father figure, the elder brother, or whatever. It's that common theme. It's great to hear, Graham. What about the academy? Do you have any responsibilities for those, or are they managed separately?
No, we it's one of the beauties of sport at the moment where we are financially. The academy trains with the seniors, so they're thrown straight in. So I'll be having the same conversations with them. I would say there's many meetings or discussions that I have with the players. I mean, we can have 4 meetings a day. Meetings kill me, absolutely kill me. You got to keep changing things up there. But I can promise you, they probably remember 10% of what I tell them in a conversation or a meeting. But 90% of the time, they'll remember how you make them feel in that meeting. You know, and that's important for meetings, and that's one-on-one conversations, and that there's an art to that. That's telling the guy he's not playing, being honest with him, and telling the guy what he needs to do to improve, and just talking to a guy about his home life. And I'd say now more than ever, it has to be that balance. They've got to know you've got to care about them and their families. I won't talk rugby with these guys. Obviously, there's nothing to talk about, but they'll know that I'm worried about them and I'm there for them. I think you can broaden that into your industry, your patients and your staff in particular. Everyone wants to know that, you know, you're there for them, you know, you're in it together.
Yeah. I mean, I did make a few notes beforehand, and you know, before this call, and it strikes me that although the environment is completely alien to us all, right? We are social beings. You know, one of the benefits of going to work, whatever you do, is interaction with other human beings. I think one of the myths of one day we'll all work from home is it's all going to be glorious. Actually, it isn't, because we do like that social interaction. Whether it's then physical interaction in your world or not is by the by. But I think the principles of leadership, discipline, teamwork, and these are the order I wrote them down in, but also most importantly, I underlined it 14 times, caring, asking questions, being there, listening, understanding. And the conversation probably isn't about, as you say, what's going to be the gameplay for the next match. Who knows? Who knows when that's going to be? Who knows what the conditions will be? Who knows what the weight of the opposition's pack will be? We just don't bloody know. And it's great to hear that. What I'm hearing, Graham, is that, and I think the people listening to the call will be hearing some common messages which are universal. It's not a rugby thing at the moment. It's not a dentistry thing in my mind. You know, it is when we're talking to them about their toothache or whatever. Yeah, okay. And what? So what are you doing? What are you doing? Who's talking to you? Because, you know,
my dentist.
Who keeps Graham saying?
My dentist is talking to me at the moment. My good wife shouting at me, Graham, not another bottle.
I did wonder what was in the fridge behind you. I guess there's probably some red wine in there. Is my guess. I don't know. Just an assumption.
It's full of isotonic drinks, Kevin. Isotonic drinks.
Well, look, mate. I know you're a busy chap. If you can stay on, and if there's time for some questions, we'll do them. But Graham, thank you. Some good insights there. There was one other thing actually which springs to mind. One of the things you asked the room last year was, how often do you practice? How often do you train? And universally, the response from a bunch of dentists was, well, we train for medical emergencies. We practice for when the shit hits the fan. And that isn't quite what you meant. And I still use this analogy now when I'm talking to teams, which is what you mean is preparing for the almost predictably unexpected. So if we know it's going to be raining on a Saturday and it's sunny on a Tuesday when you're training, we might as well play with a wet rugby ball, right? Or stick some goose grease on the hands or whatever you do. I know this is not a COVID conversation, but I'm just interested in exploring that principle with you, because I believe it's something that we could be doing, or furlough permitting, we could be doing now with our teams, which is talking about what are we going to do when the doors open again on Monday morning at 8:30 in a few months' time and the phones don't stop ringing. Now, I know you don't need to answer that per se, but the elements of what we prepare for, and I'm just interested, what's your take on the practicing and the rehearsing that you do throughout the week for then 40 minutes of action on a Saturday, particularly when you're not actually in there with them. You are at a distance from them, potentially sat up in a bloody stand behind a glass screen, potentially. How do you prepare to send 15 blokes out onto a pitch and then not expect them to stop halfway through and to be told what to do?
You have to, that's a fluffy word, empower. You have to empower players. You do, but within their working week, you have to create as much chaos as you can. It could be rugby, like many sports. You have a menu of calls and moves, and you have a shape. I've told you last year, there's a shape in rugby that you can go to where people know where to stand, and if in doubt, you just try and get the ball to the edge of the field and work back into a shape where everyone knows what they're doing. The rest of the week, it's about chaos, Kevin. You're a man down, there's two men down. And you have to, I think the important thing, particularly in any industry, I'd say in dentistry as well, is people being given chance to lead under pressure in the week, or in scenarios, testing their leadership and making them more feel comfortable, and testing the chain of command. So your nurse is not afraid to come and speak to the boss on a Monday morning at 11 o'clock when there's multiple things going wrong in your surgery. She's not afraid to go and speak to the boss. It's chaos training. We do a lot of that in our game. And as you said, from using wet, soapy balls to practicing with men down. Crikey, we even practice with our tops off, mauling sometimes. But let's not go into that because I'm not sure that's strictly legal, to be fair, with the players' union. But no, practice, we do that as well. Practice as much chaos as you can. That's the only way to test out what's going to happen in battle. Great.
Yeah, I think, and that's what I hope I'd like people to, one of the things to take away, if we remember, like you say, 10% of this is now is a perfectly good time to practice. There are some things that are likely to happen. There's going to be that patient that turns up late when we open the doors again. There's going to be that, engaged tone on the phone while everyone's trying to get through. There's going to be a few complaints. There's going to be a bit of grumbling from patients because it's going to get very busy again. And I guess the point is we need to be prepared for that. And we shouldn't be surprised when those things happen, just like we shouldn't be surprised if someone gets sin-binned with 5 minutes to go and whatever. And the more we physically, and I guess in your case it's physically and mentally, but it's the same in dental practice. There's physical preparation as well as mental preparation, and that's something we can take responsibility for, I think, now as leaders, as much as any time. But one thing that I think it's given us this period is time to just pause. And I know you're used to running around at 3 million miles an hour, and we all are. Dentists are very busy people, but it gives us time to pause and think, and that's really, just how are we going to respond? How are we going to react when it happens? And if you can immunize people so they've thought about what they're going to do in that situation when it's going to happen, then they are. I'm with you. I don't like the phrase. I think it's a bit wishy-washy, empower, but they will have that sense of ownership around a basic structure and around a basic shape. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, of course. I think it only works if everyone's got their voice. and everyone has to be able to, in a crisis, has to be able to speak up. I was reading a book called Black Box Thinking. I'm pretty sure most of you are all intellects. You've all read that. The opening chapter is about the lady unfortunately passes away, the routine operation, because they couldn't ventilate her properly. And there's a young nurse who was there quietly thinking, we're going to give her a trachea, we're going to give her a trachea, we're going to give her a trachea, but she didn't feel it was her place to suggest to the senior consultants, let's try and give her a tracheotomy. And that's what you don't want. You don't want anyone who's silent in a meeting. You want everyone to have a voice, because in crisis you need everybody, and that person might have the answer to everything. And that is break down your squads if they're not comfortable. Not everyone's comfortable speaking up in a meeting. So break your meetings down, have smaller meetings. That's what we do. So the young 17-year-old is not afraid to speak up, because in time of crisis, you may need them.
They may have the answers. Yeah. Graham, thank you. Fascinating, mate. Appreciate that.
Can I just come in on that and reinforce? One of my what Graham's saying there is a lot of my reading is World War II history and military history and stuff like that. Nothing to do with dentistry whatsoever, but strategic planning. The most successful military operations are often done when the team has been empowered to plan it together, rather than I'm going to do this and you're all going to follow me. And the SAS do this now. And there is no rank or hierarchy in an SAS 4-man or 8-man team. And when they plan any form of assault or anything, they have a Chinese parliament and they throw all the plans in together. Everybody can say what they want without fear of criticism, and the best plan will come out of it. But the other thing to remember is no plan survives first contact with the enemy.
That's the old military adage, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, when the fog of war comes down, literally and metaphorically, it always strikes me the best you can do is hope that everyone understands what the mission is and how they're meant to behave, because you ain't going to be able to communicate with the front line. And it's always struck me that you guys are going to be back in the game at some point. The door of your surgery is going to be closed. You're going to have God knows what mask on, God knows what level of PPE you're going to be wearing, and you won't be able to communicate. You won't be able to communicate with what's going on outside of your surgery. And yeah, absolutely. I love that analogy, Simon. Brilliant, thank you. I'm going to bring Mark on. Graham, thank you very much, mate. If you can stick around, I know you're a busy chap. Great. If you can't, you can't.
Who's next? Mark Shayler?
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Definitely sticking around for this.
So,
what's he wearing? I want to see his shoes first. What's he wearing?
Just a pair of kind of New Balance,
Hang on. What about the trousers? What are the trousers?
A pair of Nike.
In fact, just stand up and step backwards.
I look like a chav today. I've got a bit of a thing
today.
Going on. Yeah, today.
Are they tracky bottoms you're wearing, Mark? That's
yeah, they're a reissue of the 1977 Nike Blue Ribbon tracky bottoms that my son-in-law bought me.
I thought they'd be classic.
Well, I'm permanently in leisure wear these days. I'm totally flammable. You put a naked flame near me, I'm doing it.
Mark, I'm not quite sure how to introduce you. I know you do wonderful things, and I know that when you spoke last year, you you effectively tracked pop art over about the past 40 years and tracked what was going on musically with what was going on in society, what was going on in business, and how culture has changed and how music has changed. And frankly, everyone was absolutely bloody spellbound. And I'm eternally grateful for what you did then. And even now, nearly a year later, people are still going, who was that slightly weird bloke that was brilliant? And I think, oh, you mean Mark? Yeah, that's the one. So that's my introduction to Mark Shayler.
Well, I'll take weird but brilliant. I'll take that. And musically, this is quite an interesting time. You've got all these kids out of school. You've got all these young creatives out of work, all sat around. You've got a whole load of the electronic, the really early kind of like Moog software has all been released for free. So you can download all these things onto your iPads and your other devices. And I think we're going to hit a really rich creative vein as a result of this. That doesn't help me that every single contract I've got has now been postponed until October, which is fine. They'll come back. But I'd already sold October. So it's going to be a really interesting challenge. And picking up on what Wig was saying, the work that I'm doing right now is all about emotional support. I was one of the kind of like first to stop going to London for the day. I could see the trajectory of this. I had something cancelled. I had a 20, 30 grand worth of work cancelled in Hong Kong, which I should be there now. And I could just see the big casualties in this would be mental health, actually. I mean, yeah, some of us might go bust, but I mean, I'll be fine. We've had a couple of very good years, but I can see that a lot of the cracks are actually in terms of mental health rather than anything else. So I set up something on a Monday morning called Monday Communion. I put it on Instagram and on LinkedIn and said, 9 o'clock, here's the Zoom link, jump in. We had 200 people register. And just to pick again, the themes, Graham and I, we should talk together more because the themes just flow beautifully like the swash and backwash of a gentle ocean. And you break the groups down. So I've got 200 people in one Zoom call. That is just utter chaos. But obviously in Zoom, you've got these rooms that you can break people into. So I automatically assign people into one of 20 rooms. So there's only 10 people in a room. And those people that were really nervous about sharing their voice, those people that maybe had their voice stolen in the past, they were able to say things, and those things then got accumulated, and we ended up with a really lovely document of hope. And you have to have the I always call them the dog shit conversations. The moaning about your area starts by talking about dog poo, and then you can imagine a better future. You've got to get the dog poo out the way first. And so we're on the
white dog poo as a child of the 70s.
Well, white dog poo is still a thing, right? So I did some experiments with dog poo a couple of years ago. I had this theory that white dog poo came from dogs eating bones and white dog biscuits rather than the meat and the luxurious iams that our dogs have now. So I fed my little Jack Russell on bones for about 3 days. He pooed white dog poo. So it still exists. It's just that our dog diet has got so much better. He died a few days after of malnutrition, but it was worth doing, I think, just to get the result. But I put this call out, and I was inundated. And the really interesting thing was that I thought it would all be the self-employed. I thought it would all be small companies, creative agencies, people who literally had everything stopped. I probably lost 80 grand's worth of work in total, but it will come back, but it's a way off. And by breaking people down and by asking questions of positivity, so you have the dog shit conversations first, and then I just asked them all to come up with three reasons that they feel positive, 3 things to celebrate, and then I recorded it all, and we played it all back amongst each other, and it was just the most life affirming conversations I've had. And we've had another one this Monday, and that worked really, really well. And then on the Friday, I renamed it Free Day, and I work for free every Friday. I mean, in reality, I'm working for free every day at the moment, but I work for free every Friday. You can book a 45-minute appointment with me. Instead of costing you 150 quid, that costs you nothing. And again, inundated and unsurprisingly, but it doesn't matter because I'm helping people, and they'll remember this afterwards. They'll remember this. And so I've done those 2 things, and then the other thing that I've done is I've invested in myself a little bit. So a lot of my workshops, a lot of the work I do is face-to-face. I'm meetings, airplanes, innovation sessions. And I've already been feeling pretty guilty about the number of flights I had last year. Virgin love me. I'm a gold member or whatever it is, but that's not good for the planet. And so I was experimenting with putting stuff online, and we're spending Wednesday, what day is it today? Tuesday. We're spending Wednesday and Thursday every week recording my presentation workshop and my innovation workshops as individual modules that I can then sell. And they'll still be 300 quid for the workshop, but you get access to them for a year. But once I've recorded it, I've done the work. I mean, you can't do this with teeth, but you can do this with education. I can then just sit and watch the money come in. But most importantly, I'll be able to drop prices for those that can't afford a full package, and hopefully you become almost like a kind of shorthand for sustainable innovation. That's my plan, and just dropping a few hints on Instagram and on LinkedIn. Been really successful. So there's been some really interesting stuff. But one of the things that I've been really impressed with, I've been using this curve. Hopefully you can see it, and I'm going to put the document into the chat now. But this is a really interesting curve here. So you've got the Kubler-Ross change curve, this is called, and I'm going to talk to it and hold it at the same time. If it disappears and my family photos pop up, I can only but apologise. But this kind of talks you through the way it's used for grief on the whole. And actually, do you know what? One of the conversations we had online on that first day was rich with grief, the metaphors of grief, grieving the job that you had, actually grieving the person that you were before this. People really struggle to claw some self-identity and to claw some self-value when they didn't have a desk to go to, a job to go to. They couldn't make the calls that made them feel important, and they're just the trinkets of value. You've got to love who you are before you can begin to do anything. So this kind of takes you through that from shock into denial, frustration. This one's called depression at the bottom here. I actually just called this lethargy. This hit me on about day 4. I just couldn't be arsed with anything. I genuinely, that's when I started wearing leisure wear. Started wearing leisure wear and just eating toast. And I've stopped the toast, right? But then you end up experimenting. That's when I began to play around with different video formats, began to play around with working out. And I've got a new book launching next week, which is really good timing. So I've put a few things out on that, and that's begun to work. And then you start making decisions about your future. Now, I don't know where you are in this team, your team dentist. You're probably somewhere between frustration and experimentation, I'm guessing. Probably you've moved out of depression. I hope so, because like you just can't go on like that. You can't go on in lethargy. You've got to step up and into experimentation. That makes a lot of sense. That sounds to me like that's where Graham and Munster are. And then you start making decisions, and then you integrate the learning that you've got from this new model into the old model. So what can you take from this difficulty? This isn't just, in my world, this isn't going to end when it finishes. It's going to change the way that I do business forever. It's going to change a whole load of things. There'll be a rush to the bottom for day rates, for example. I know that for a fact, because everyone's going to be released to do work again, and they're all going to say, well, I'll do it for $1,000, I'll do it for 500, I'll do it for 200. I can just see this. I'm just going to hold my nerve. I'm staying exactly where I am, either really expensive, or free for those that can't afford at all. I don't charge them anything. But the other thing that I've done that's proved, I kind of did this on a whim, and it's proved incredibly effective. Don't laugh at me, Graham. Now I'm going to watch your face closely. I'm a big fan of Tai Chi as it's a martial art, but it's very slow and old people can do it. And I moved from Tai Chi into Qigong, which is a standing yoga, it's known as. And I do it about 3 mornings a week. And I wanted to form a practice that was bigger than 3 mornings a week. So I thought, well, what I'll do, I'll film me doing it. And I even went out and bought like a new stand for my iPad. That impressive thing this is. And I film it every morning. I'm either in here with the rainbow behind me, or I'm outside on the deck with the chickens picking at my feet. And all I do is I talk people through my practice. And on day 1, I had like 20 people. I've been doing it for, I don't know, 8-9 days now. This morning, I had over 100 people join me for Qigong in the morning. I'm not a teacher. Of course, I'm a teacher. I'm not an expert. Of course, I'm an expert. And then I put it on my Instagram story, and it's on there for 24 hours. And over those 24 hours, I have another 200 people watching it. And I'm going to carry on doing it until no one watches it. But then the messages started coming in. The first one was from a friend. He's an artist. He lives in East London. He lives just right next door to Vicky Park. And he just said to me, and I believe him because I've spoken to him today, I'm a hypochondriac. and I have anxiety. This is my worst nightmare. I wouldn't even get out of bed if it wasn't for your sessions.
Wow.
Shit.
Wow.
Carry on with that. And I must have had 20 messages over the last 2 days with people saying, don't stop. It's brilliant. And it's that, it's that whole having a routine and a purpose. And Stephen Fry talked about this really beautifully the other day in his interview for Newsnight. I think it was Newsnight, or Andrew Marr, I forget. And he talked about having a timetable, having a reason to be up, celebrating the fact that you're breathing. You know, if you wake up every morning and you put your hands to the side and you can't feel the coffin, then it's a win as far as I'm concerned. And so celebrating the fact you're alive, having a timetable, and then slowing down, just like little things like, you know, I set the coffee percolator. I'm all about the drip. I'm so hipster, it's untrue. So I've got the old coffee percolator dripping, and I'm just watching the drip dissolve, the water go into the coffee grinds. I'm really enjoying that. When was the last time you spent time laying on your back looking at the clouds? When was the last time you did that? And so just slowing everything down, and actually what comes from that, I think, or me, clearer, better decision making, seeing a bigger picture rather than a rushed picture. And I know you need to make decisions fast sometimes, and I know you need to plan for war and for contingency. And Graham beautifully described what happened at the end of the England-Wales game there, or one of you did. So one man sent off and another man injured. That's like down to 13 men. Lucky to hold on. We were lucky to hold on. And so it's important to be able to think on your feet. But I'm actually enjoying taking my time. And I woke up this morning, so I'm in the experimentation phase, right? The decision phase, actually. And I woke up this morning, and this new book I've got is on presentation skills. And I'm supposed to have a big party on Thursday. And I've never book launch before. I was really excited. Gonna, you know, press photos and all that stuff. And then it's cancelled. Getting pretty down about the whole thing. And then I put on Instagram that it was coming out still and you could buy it. And someone said, have you got a chapter in there on how to present on Zoom? And I thought, shit, I haven't actually. But that's easy. I can write a chapter. I wrote it this afternoon. It took me an hour and a half to write a chapter. But the book's printed. I've got the book. It's in the house. And I thought, shit, it's too late. So now it's a free download. And then I thought, I can do more than that. If this will work for people who buy it, this will work for the press. So I rang the publisher and said, look, I want to do something special on this. And she just said, no. She's in the non-experiment. She's in the utter depression mode, the publisher is. No, there's no need. I'll just tell people that all of the advice applies if you're sitting down or standing up. And I said, no, Miranda, it's not that. If we push this out to the Observer, if I get this in front of people on the One Show, they'll buy this story. Well, then she was interested, right? Because she got like 14 books in this race, all of which will have an upswell. So she said, no, anyone at the One Show. And I do. My friend Lucy is a presenter on the One Show. So I messaged Lucy. She normally comes back within like 4 days. She's quite slow and I'm not that important. 4 seconds. Love it. Brilliant. What can you send me? Yeah. So all of a sudden, this depressed opportunity, this opportunity which I was beginning to think was maybe going to pass me by, it might be a slow burner, this book, suddenly it's going to be big and I'm going to be on all of these things. And that's not about ego, that's about the fact I've got no fucking income. That's why I've got no blooming income. So I need something. So that experimentation phase, so my lessons are, and I'm rambling on too long, take your time, really enjoy the slowness of it. Think about how you can change your practice for good. Secondly, experiment. How can you do something today that's going to take you into tomorrow a little bit stronger? Talk to your customers. There's absolutely no ban on using the phone. Ring up your customers and say, tell us about our service. How can we make it better? Use this dead time to learn. And it's very Buddhist, and I'm getting more and more that way as I'm getting older. And me and Graham were friends as kids, so we'll probably find it quite hard to believe. But sit in the problem for a little longer. Sit in discomfort for a little longer. Talk to your customers. Find out what they want. Experiment and enjoy the slowness of these next few weeks, because it ain't going to last. Once you get back to work, you've got all those cancellations to fit in, and it's going to be fierce.
Yeah, Mark, that's fascinating. Thank you. And Graham did keep a straight face, actually. I think he took all that in.
Good.
if there's a few legacies, I think, coming out of this period that I've noticed already. One is that sense of slowing things down because we're spending time with our families and loved ones where possible. If not face to face, we are Zoom meet, FaceTiming our parents. Okay, you get a picture of the fridge or the ceiling. You don't actually get your parents, but we're at least trying to FaceTime our parents, and we're FaceTiming each other. And I think one of the things we spoke about, and I'm talking to Drew Shah about this, is that what we do now as a business, let alone as a dental practice as a business, how we behave now will be remembered. No doubt, no doubt. And I think the time is right to do something, and I'm still working out what the do something exactly is, but I'm seeing people doing this themselves. Do things now with your business, and in dentistry terms, it's how we behave now with our patients that will be remembered. And I think there is a massive opportunity. In fact, I would say it is the opportunity for dental healthcare, frontline healthcare professionals, to get through this period and for people to look back and go, actually, dentists are all right. Dentists are human beings. And we spoke about how that super vet chap, got on TV, and we've humanised veterinary. Yeah, we've humanised it. There's an opportunity now to humanise dentists and dentistry. My concern is that, like you say, we go back to being busy. And you know what? I expect there will be not a gap in a dentist book for months when we return to normal. There may even be further restrictions even when we do go back to normal in terms of how long you can, the gaps in between seeing patients and all the rest of it. It's quite concerning. But we'll go back to being busy, and that's great for serving the people that were okay with going to the dentist. But what about the poor buggers that never were? And if nothing's shifted, that's an opportunity wasted. The 40 million people that don't attend the dentist regularly, children and adults with preventable disease in their mouths, we need to get a shift in people's thinking about the profession. And I think the time is right. The NHS is going to become untouchable. It's like the new Princess Diana. And, that idea that dentists are frontline healthcare professionals and we are there to care, we are there to serve, is something that we can capture upon now, because dentists don't normally have time to talk to their patients, if you like, outside of the surgery. Yes, we might do a few posts on Instagram or Facebook, and once a year you have your crazy Christmas elf and, oh, aren't we funny, and all the rest of it. But there's a chance to do that every single day right now, every single day. And I think this idea of going from this kind of low in the Kluber-Ross curve to this experimenting and then taking action idea is what we're seeing. And what Drew and I are working on is how we can codify that. Some dentists like to be told what to do, and I think we need to come up with a way of telling dentists how they can start making that change the narrative of dentist and dentistry. It annoys me immensely that we're only seeing bad news about dentists. Even the Daily Mail still can't change their bloody narrative, and they've got no idea that dentists are not earning at the moment, and they don't all have Ferraris. We have to overcome that. And the danger is we get back to being busy. We're just seeing checkups and emergencies that are not really emergencies. You can't see a dentist. And those things never paid the bills anyway. Checkups and emergencies never paid the bills. It was the other stuff that paid the bills, whether you're partly funded by the NHS or not. And there's a real danger we're going to an era of frontline dental healthcare that's just reacting to stuff. And what about those poor buggers who still have the same perception of going to the dentist? And that's where that's the phase I think we're at, or a lot of people are at. And we need to encourage that. So your insight, Mark, I think is very well timed. I might even join you tomorrow morning and do some, what do you call it? Chai Gong Wong or something.
Qigong.
That's the fella. Graham's in for it. Graham, you up for that tomorrow morning on your patio? I'll take that as a yes. Right, Mark, brilliant. Thank you.
I'm going to slip off, Kevin, if that's all right. I've got an appointment with a watt bike.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I'm going to unmute Simon. Now, I know Simon's become a bit of a kind of webinar celebrity, almost, and is almost looking webinar fatigued. But I want to focus rather on GDC and the Chief Dental Officer for once. Can we focus on some of the more humane things we're doing at the moment, like the coffee morning that you had, the virtual coffee morning, Simon? What a great opportunity to reach out to your community and say, come and have a bloody cup of coffee with us. I mean, I don't know how good the coffee was, but how did that go?
That was all up to the individuals, wasn't it? It went quite well. It didn't go as well as it could have done because we had a problem with the email server. So it sent the emails out the wrong time. So they went out this morning to say, see you tomorrow, Tuesday. And we didn't get as many as possible, but we got 5 or 6 patients who, some of them weren't the ones I thought they would be, and they all appreciated it. We got some of the staff joining in as well. We got some incredibly good news from one of my old patients who he's basically right in the risk group for COVID. Massive lung problems. And we found out that he'd been in hospital with it, got the full version of it, but they'd released him that morning and he'd survived. Wow. And it was nice to get a positive of that kind, rather than, I think we all now know somebody who's been affected by it, but to actually get the, that good news that made my day. Yesterday I was feeling a bit down. It was probably in that, as Mark said earlier, that depression phase. But I think I do that curve day in and day out.
You do it by the hour, to be fair.
I do it by the hour, yeah. But it was good. We're going to do another one next week. We'll plan it a bit better this time. We're going to do it along.
Technical issues aside, what a bloody good idea, right? I mean, I think someone's just posted, as Drew put that, what you could get those 6 patients who logged in to host the next coffee morning.
Yeah,
I think there's an massive opportunity here to decloak dentistry, right? So, we've been doing it the wrong way around. I think what we've been saying is, from the inside out, this is dentistry, and this is what we do, and this is how it works. And sometimes you can have your teeth whitened, and sometimes you might want an implant, or if you're nervous, we'll do this and all that. Fine. And we've got better ways of doing that, and social media has given us one of those ways of doing it. But I really believe that, and this is a great example, get your patients to host a coffee morning, then they're becoming part of the dental practice. Yeah. And you've almost got the perfect example of social proof, because everyone, there was a post the other day, excuse me, someone put, which was, a member of the public had put, can anyone recommend a decent dentist that I can trust? Now, how shit has it become if the only differentiator between picking a dentist and not picking a dentist is one that was good and you can trust? And that someone just going, well, my dentist is good and you can trust, is the difference between that patient coming to your practice and not. So we know this social proof thing works, right? There's that sort of pack mentality. And the more patients that we can get talking about now how we're behaving as a profession, and what a great opportunity. You're literally bringing dentists into your front room or your garden, as you were on Friday, or by video. You're humanising it. That's the opportunity. And
I've always said to my patients that, and I got a bit slagged off at the beginning of my career with some of the older dentists who said it was unprofessional. But I've always tried not to be the dentist. I've just tried to be some Yorkshire bloke who is I happen to do that for a job, but that's not what defines me. And I think being approachable and just being to me, it's almost irrelevant what I'm doing. The fact that what we do is one of the greatest privileges, is to look after another person's health. But actually, that's irrelevant. I'd be exactly the same in my approach to people. If I was a plumber, or if I was, you know, a neurosurgeon, you know, I think any interaction with another human being, really, we shouldn't put too many filters and airs and graces in front of us, so that they can see the real person, because they will connect with you, I think, in that far more, and I say an intimate manner, I don't mean it in a dodgy way, but there's a connection there. And for me, it felt like, I was sat with a bunch of friends this morning. Yes, 50-50, my nurses, some of my nurses, not all of them, because they hadn't done the hair. But, you know, with the patients that were there, some of them were lonely. They didn't. And actually, we had somebody join us from South Africa who just wanted to see what it was like. I think it was to do with, you know, because Chris Barrow, with all the webinars I've been doing, one of his, contacts in South Africa joined, and he was telling us about South African MOTs, because the question about, well, what if my MOT runs out while I'm stuck in this lockdown? How do I go out? What do we do? And, you know, it was a useful thing. There was very little dentistry talked about, virtually none.
Yeah, it's right now. It seems that if I can quote Simon Sinek, it's the ultimate opportunity to communicate our why, to communicate our purpose. You know, we tend to talk about, to communicate with the easiest thing to explain. This is dentistry, to the fuzziest thing, which is, this is why we do it. This is what we're about. And that's what builds trust. And anyone that's worked with me on this call knows I bang on about this all the time, but it's the ultimate opportunity to communicate from the inside out, starting with our why. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. We know that. My challenge to you all, the opportunity you have, is to keep that going. Keep that communicating from the inside out going, because if coffee mornings work now, they'll work in 6 months' time. If being human now as a dentist works, it will work in 6 months' time. The biggest, I'm sounding negative, but the biggest shame would be, after all of this, we just go back to the same old. We might not be able to go back to our old ways because of various clinical restrictions and whatever, but what an opportunity wasted if we just go back to doing the same old thing. And there's going to be, if we're not careful, no white space, but record amounts of unbooked open treatment plans. Because remember, everybody is going to be looking in their pockets and looking at their bank balances. And when they come in for a checkup and you see a mouthful of stuff, much as you want to talk about that mouthful of stuff, just as we always do, people need to understand, first of all, that you're doing that for the right reasons. That doing the right thing is always been good for business, always been good for business. And now's the ultimate time to really highlight that.
I think people are going to remember who helped them through this.
Well, there's even some, I saw something the other day, I think Steve Hudson sent me, it's some sort of barometer of retailers and whether retailers have behaved like dickheads or not during this period. You know, people remember it. And, you know, even I'm softened about Tesco's at the moment. Even I hate Tesco's. Even I'm warming to Tesco's because they're trying, however cynical you might be. I still won't go there yet, right? But even we're softening to these things.
You're still going to Sports Direct though, are you?
Look, we said an hour. We said 45 minutes to an hour, so I'm going to wrap things up. Or for those that want to stay on, I'm here all night. But if I may, I'm going to unmute Alison Thompson because
not exactly going anywhere for the next 3 months, mate.
Simon, thank you as ever for your insights and wisdom. Alison, I'm going to unmute you. I'm giving you the 30-second notice. Hello, Alison. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
And we can hear you. I've been watching what you've been putting out in social media. I always do. I know it works. For those that don't know you, I'll blow your trumpet for you. You are a hygienist, and you run a hygienist-driven dental practice with dentists in a barn at the end of a farm track in the middle of bloody nowhere. Right?
Yeah.
And consistently, and there will be no doubt a bit of a pause at the moment, but consistently in recent months, we're seeing 50 to 60 new patients coming into your dental practice. Now, there's people on this call, we've got probably 3 or 4 times as many surgeries who would be delighted to have 50 or 60 new patients coming into their practice. How have you been doing it? And I don't think you've changed. I'm watching what you're posting, and in many ways, nothing's changed. That's interesting.
Yeah, one of the things, when I very first started the practice, I mean, I've been qualified a long time. I qualified in 1982. And at the time, we didn't even call the dentists by their Christian names. We called them Mr. whatever. And I kind of tried to do that the first couple of years. And then the biggest change for me was that we actually stopped selling our dentistry. So we don't post any teeth pictures whatsoever. We occasionally do what's bonding or something, but we don't say, oh, look how wonderful we are, look at these wonderful crowns. And we started to sell our experience. And our target market is really nervous people. And we started to share who we were as a practice and our values and how we looked after you and things. And our practice has grown not through our dentistry, but through how we've treated people, how we've looked after them, how, more importantly, how we've made them feel about themselves. And that, from the time we started selling our experience, that's the difference. And it's about people knowing who you are, rather than me for that first 2 years trying to pretend I was this big professional person and, I had to act in a certain way. And it's very strange. I went into work today just to check everything was all right. And the silence just hit me, and I had a good old cry on my sofa at work. And I just made a video, and it's straight from the heart. And it's just talking about our practice is always a bit daft and a bit silly and a lot of laughter, and treating people as real people. And that wave of going in, and it was completely silent. I just had to do a video, and it's just a sort of video about how I feel and how I realise how I miss all the patients and miss the girls, and I just miss everything, and I actually just miss chatting to people. And that's already had 459 views in a couple of hours. And it's just people who want to see you, not who you think you should show them.
Alison, that I think that brings us to a lovely natural conclusion, because I hope you're okay, by the way. I hope the tears didn't last too long.
No, I had a very bad dip on Saturday. That was my bottom curve.
I look forward to being sat on that sofa in the near future again with you, and I'll give you a massive hug. And it goes right back quite naturally to what Graham was saying. And this call was all about, not really about dentistry. That's why I got 2 people in who were not dentists. And how you make people feel, just as Graham was saying an hour ago, how you make people feel during this period is absolutely critical to how we will come out of this, and how we will, I think, come out stronger. And I believe there is a once in a lifetime. Let's face it, I hope we don't have the exact same situation again, or rather the same cause. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to change the narrative about dentists and dentistry. And this whole being human bit, communicating from the inside out, is absolutely key. And you've been doing it before, you're doing it during, and I expect absolutely you'll be doing it after.
I'm going to throw in some little thing in the mix here, Kevin, just before I shoot off. Speaking with Zach and a few of us, I think we call this once in a lifetime, remembering one very important thing here. We've never, ever had a situation like this before, ever, where we've just been told to shut the hell down and focus on yourself. However, one important thing to note here is that I think pandemics are going to become a norm. There may be a point in the future where we will be kind of not completely shutting down like this, not having a complete red light break, but we will be stopping and starting. An important part about this stopping and starting is going to be that we will be faced with unpredictability like never before. The world has gone that way anyway. And interestingly, a course I was developing in January, I look back at that slide and it said exactly that. I'd put in there that we're probably approaching the most unpredictable world we're ever going to face. I'm sorry, but routine is not going to work. I'm sorry, but setting systems is fine, but we are going to need teams and people around us who understand that unpredictability is around the corner. We will have to be so quickly adaptable. And the biggest thing we can do to be adaptable in that sort of a scenario that's going to come to us is getting people into connecting with us. That's the big opportunity now. Creating our teams that understand why. Creating our patient community. Patients will bring in patients. People will bring in people into our practices because they understand our why. And if in complete unpredictability, in complete uncertainty, in a complete break of routine in the future, the only constant in a future changing world is going to be our why and how strong that why is reflected into the community that we serve. That community is our team, our patients, and our colleagues around us. Nothing will be stronger than that. So focus on that massively. Yeah, and that's my message. Before I shoot off, Ian's getting restless.
I'm going to do that thing now where I go what he said, because you've just summarised, I think, what we've been talking about for the past hour, Drew. And I think you're right. Just to wrap things up, businesses that engage with their communities always have done well, and it's going to be even more important in the future. There was already a groundswell of acceptance that it isn't just enough anymore to make money from the businesses, the goods or services that you provide. It isn't enough. That started because of the environment, and the environment conversation will come back when we get out of this, and that principle will come back, and I think it's going to come back stronger. Do the right thing, and the results will follow. It's what I'm seeing in this. Look, guys, thank you very much. I've actually managed to keep pretty much everybody on the call, so I guess you've all heard something in that. And unless anyone's got any burning things to cover, let's all go and switch our phones off for an hour, not watch the news, and just be present and watch the coffee dripping into the coffee filter pot or whatever. Folks, thank you very, very much. Really, really, real privilege to have you all on the call. And at that point, I'm going to wrap things up and have a wonderful evening.